are going to discuss Ukraine. Lots to talk about, lots of developments on that front. As of the taping of this show, mild sanctions passed by the United States, promises of grant, perhaps some aids. Some jet fighters have gone over there and a Navy ship. Meanwhile, Crimea, the parliament, has voted to put to a referendum on March 16th whether to join the Russian Federation. Tom Farmer, I want to start with you. What does this mean to you, Crimea voting to want to go back to the Russian Federation?
Well, it means that there's sympathy for the old country. You know, Ukraine has only been independent for a decade or maybe 23, 24 years. So when the old guard comes calling, there are some people who are going to pay attention. And where you stand in Ukraine basically depends on where your house is. It's an east-west crossroads, and the further you are to the east, where Russia lies, the more sympathetic you are. Look, there's not a whole lot we can do about this. The sanctions that were announced today by the White House are essentially visa bans and things around the edges. Ooh, visa bans, very scary. You know, it's an example of the kind of limited weaponry we've got here. And I think that Putin probably takes that into his calculus as he decides to ignore all this outrage in the Western world about this. Putin wants to get the band back together. He's like Joliet Jake and Elwood. He's going to go around to all the old blues clubs and get Ukraine back on there, get Georgia back in there, get them all playing again. You know, we're going to have a big concert. He has a dream of reestablishing a sort of a Soviet-like sphere in this part of the world, and this is the first aggressive step.
And Rich, the Crimea has historically, since 1954, it was, or before 1954, was part of the old Soviet Union, and then became part of the Ukraine when it separated. What's the significance of the Crimea?
Well, first of all, it is, although it's Russian-oriented, and although 60% of the population is actually ethnic Russians, it actually doesn't directly connect. If you look at a map, it doesn't directly connect with Russia. It actually connects more toward the Ukraine. It's been a very there's some kind of iffy questions about whether Putin is really, whether an invasion would really be in violation of international law, because technically Russia in 1954, Russia gave it to the Ukraine, but the Ukraine, of course, was part of the Soviet Union. Now the Soviet Union is dissoluted, so it's this. So Russia is, I guess, so now it would be owned by, theoretically, the Ukraine, which is part of, which is now an independent country. So the question is, if it was given under the Russian government originally, even though that was part of the Soviet Union, what does that mean now? So there is some questions about, in terms of, if you look at Resolution 242 of the UN Charter, which says basically that it's illegal to take over sovereign territory. There's some very hard questions there, but there are questions whether it is in the violation of international law.
Well, what do you think, Tom? I mean, there are some questions of whether there's been Russian, should I say, pressure for the parliament to vote on this. Should the people have the chance to vote on this in a referendum?
Well, of course there's pressure. Look at all those tanks. You know, that's what pressure looks like, is guys with guns walking around your neighborhood. Yeah. I'd say there's pressure, there's boots on the ground, but I know that there's one actually recognized tenet. It's that the citizens have a right to self-determination. And if you look at Henry Kissinger, that old genocide, and essay in today's New York Times about how to solve this thing, he says essentially, hate to say it makes sense, but this is one of those occasions, Putin has to realize that you can't use a policy of military impositions over and over again in a case like this. It will only lead to another Cold War. You have to recognize self-determination. The United States, on the other hand, cannot get all high and mighty and try to treat Russia as if they have to be taught rules of conduct that originate in Washington, D.C. After all, we have a little history of invading countries we think might do us harm preemptively on some trumped-up notion. So we don't really occupy the moral high ground either. This is going to have to be wound back over the next few months as Putin comes to grips with the actual cost of this strategy, and the West comes to grips with the actual paucity of tools it has to prevent this stuff from going down. We send a warship into their harbor. We send fighter planes overhead. That's stupid. You don't send those things unless you have a plan to use them. What is it? What do they think we're going to do? Bomb Kiev? I don't think so. You should send that stuff home and just wait this guy out, because the military imposition policy will fail of its own accord.
Yeah, just if I could quickly, just kind of a thumbnail sketch of when we've invaded places on somewhat spotty intelligence. The first one was the Mexican-American War in 1846. Abraham Lincoln, a young Whig congressman at the time, who became a Republican, ironically president during the Civil War, that one term in Congress, he asked James K. Polk to point out the specific spot, they actually nicknamed him Spotty, where American blood was basically shed on American soil, and he couldn't do it. Go back, fast forward for a while to 1898, the Spanish-American War. It was later found out in 1958 that the reason that the Maine was actually the reason that the Maine that the Maine fell. Remember the old slogan, "Remember the Maine." I'm getting some feedback. Remember the old slogan, "Remember the Maine." Well, that was a faulty boiler. That wasn't an attack by Spain. That was a faulty boiler. And then, of course, go back to 1964 when President Johnson got the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which passed 416 to nothing in the House and 96 to 2 in the United States Senate. We later found out that was the trumped up, that the second attack, anyways, was trumped up as well. So we do have a history of basically taking on other countries and trying to find casus belli to do it. And so we're not unique in this aspect. Let's put it that way.
I want to ask you guys, because obviously this is not in our backyard, but it is in Europe's backyard, and taking a look at countries like Poland, the former Czech Republic, where are they on this? There's been talks about them uniting with the United States in terms of trumping up their support, but where are they on this? Where are the Angela Merkels? Where are the British on this, Tom?
Well, how much have you heard from Angela Merkel in the last week or so? She's been awful quiet. In fact, all the European opinion leaders have been awful quiet on this one. They're kind of waiting to see what we do. And I think it's because secretly they know that, well, this is maybe cause for outrage, and yeah, it's outrageous behavior, and it's bellicose behavior. They, too, don't have an awful lot of tools at their disposal. And the memory of Hungary 56 and Czechoslovakia 68 is a lot more clear and present for them than it is for us. Yes. You can drive from Angela Merkel's office to Prague in a few hours. That's a whole day's flight for us. Esther, the enigmatic Eszter Vajda ought to weigh in here on the Hungarian question, because this is your heritage and you had family who were there. Does this freak people out in your family when they watch these news bulletins?
It certainly does. And sitting and watching with my mom, who was there in 1956, who saw the Russian tanks roll in. She saw a person jump on top of a tank, drop a Molotov cocktail. The Russian tanker then slams into two people right in front of her. These are fresh and vivid memories. And her words tonight to me were, it reminds her of the aggression, of the utmost disrespect for human freedom, for sovereignty. Political and military aggression are words that she used over and over again. And yeah, I mean, this is, 1989 was not that long ago. This is fresh in a lot of people's memories, this type of coming in and not really asking the people what they want, just sort of doing what Putin thinks is right for him. Angela Merkel earlier this week said that she thought Putin was in another world, are the words that she used for President Obama. And I'm curious what you guys think about this lofty goal of getting the Soviet Union back, obviously to not where it was, but sort of dreams of reuniting the old empire. Is Putin out in another world? Is he delusional? Or have we lost sight of what is happening, and have we lost sight about what Putin's real intentions are? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think that his real intention I don't think he's as unrealistic to think that he can get the whole Soviet Union back together again. Certainly for one reason would be the fact that so many countries have joined NATO since, under the Clinton and Bush administration, for example, Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary have all joined NATO, so they are no longer within the orbit of Russia. Ukraine is one country which is unaligned. I think John McCain and Lindsey Graham, for example, would certainly want them to join NATO, which I think would have deleterious ramifications. And then I think on the Russian side, that's one country where theoretically they still have some kinsmanship. But I don't think I think he's realistic enough to know that despite his nationalistic fervor, that he's not going to bring the Soviet Union back. What I do think is interesting, though, is during the Cold War. During the Cold War, it was more or less there was more a love for the state, and now I think it's coming back in terms of kind of the nationalistic fervor, kind of a secular nationalism in Russia. And you wonder, though, the average person in Russia, somebody, lower middle class, a poor person in Russia, do they really care about how Russia's looked upon in the rest of the world? Aren't they more or less interested in the day-to-day, the economic needs? Do they really care about what's going on? Yeah. About about the pride of Mother Russia? That's what I'm wondering about, and I don't quite see why that would be their flagship issue right now. It's like in South Vietnam. I was just going to say, it's like in during the Vietnam War. The South Vietnamese, I don't think their number one issue was necessarily repelling communism as much as it was their rice paddies and working day-to-day life, subsisting.
Just like here, the number one issue is food on the table. That's what people care about. And you know what Mikhail Gorbachev's approval rating is amongst the Russian people? It's something like 3%. Yeah. 3 or 4%. He's the guy who took the Soviet Union down, and he's never been forgiven for it. There is still some nostalgia, I think, for the feel of the position of strength they thought they had, even though it was a hollow and rusting empire on the inside compared to the rough and tumble world they live in today. And Putin enjoys affection among the Russian people, but not universally. Actions like this. He's going to the but I do think he wants a sphere of influence, because Putin genuinely believes that the fall of the Soviet Union was a tragedy of the 20th century, and he genuinely believes that he represents an autocratic alternative to messy, decadent Western liberal democracy, which is perhaps a better way to run things, certainly more efficient. So he is in an ideological contest, whether we know it or not.
I want to just go back to something, Tom. You said that we shouldn't be even talking about this because the United States, we shouldn't be criticizing them because we did it ourselves. The difference from my standpoint of Russia in places like Hungary and Poland and the former Czechoslovakia is, you're going to laugh at this, but the censorship, the complete control of everything that was in classrooms to the supermarkets, everything was state-owned, everything was run by Putin, and there was immense fear instilled in a lot of people who would have spoken up. I'm curious your thoughts about it. I think it's a different spectrum.
How long is this show? How long have we got? We've only got, because, settle in, kids. In the aftermath of 9/11, a couple of things happened. The press self-censored and was terrified to oppose the war to a degree that haunts most of them today. And the volume of accurate information that emerged from war zones was slowed to a trickle, and there was heavy censorship.
Have we lost
visiting imagery of coffins returning to Dover Air Force Base of genuine information that was political censorship, and we're no stranger to a self-censoring press which withholds opposition because they fear it might not play in the public sphere. I don't, it's not Pravda and Izvestia and Novosti news agency, but we can't be blameless in that front.
I agree.
Now, Rich just gave us the Cook's tour of casus belli cases that the United States has pursued now for about 180 years to invade and destroy nations that haven't done anything much to us that we think we don't like. You can claim that, we had purer, more noble reasons for going into Iraq and going into Nicaragua and going into Grenada and going into Vietnam and the whole litany of places. But tell it to the families of dead Iraqi children.
Yeah.
Tell it to the Afghan families that get blown up by drones. Now, I'm not doing the whole sort of liberal hair shirt, blame America first action, but an impartial observer would say neither side has a perfect score here.
Okay, point well taken. I want to move on to a little bit about what's happening simultaneously to Ukraine. Syria continues to be an issue. The Iranian talks have fallen short. And this week we have an announcement that the U.S. Military will be to the size that it was pre-World War II. Senator McCain said this is crazy. He called on Chuck Hagel. He said his timing was just horrible, cutting troops at a time that there's so much uncertainty. Rich Rubino, what do you make of that? Is that a fair criticism?
I think the thing we really need to fear is that Grenada might want a rematch. If we keep cutting it. Yeah. But seriously, no, this is we need to be worried about attack. Maybe Grenada, Panama, and Nicaragua will all combine and take us on. No, I think this is absolutely a ridiculous criticism. Look, we still spend more than the next 10 countries combined on our military expenditures. Now, that is not the military budget. Usually, you look at it, you'll see it says, it's $600 billion or something. It's more like about $1 trillion. If you look at all the elements of it that are in other budgets, like the Department of Energy, there's a lot going on there. We are an empire. We have troops in about 140 nations. It's time that we do exactly what happened under Clement Attlee right after World War II, when the British successfully basically liquidated their empire and became what was really a great nation, but not an empire, not the empire that they had been. Are we really afraid that, for example, you keep hearing about, this fear that Iran somehow, if they're going to launch a nuclear bomb and attack us, well, we got 3,000 nuclear warheads. Do you really think that a survivalist regime like Iran would attack a country with 3,000 nuclear warheads and then get blown to smithereens? Really, I think that a lot of this, I understand a lot of this is the military-industrial complex, and some United States senators and House members, for example, in their congressional districts or in their states, have some sort of a military contractor or something that's going on there, whether it's Lockheed Martin, GE, that they have to protect. Yeah. They've really been successful. In every congressional district, there's something. Even the most liberal members of Congress have to protect thetheir interests, have to protect jobs in their district, and rightfully so. But no, I don't really think that we need to fear a diminution in the United States military budget. I think that's really laughable.
Tom, do you think Tom, do you think you can get as much as fired up as Rich can about this?
I'd be happy to if you think it'll help. But Rich is right about the defense contractors being the principal issue here. I got Boeing just up the road from me. I live in Puget Sound, and they're building commercial airplanes up there, but largely dependent on military contracts. Every time there's a military program cut, people around here have a stroke, liberal as they are, because it's jobs and money. That's what this is really all about. The real issue here, let me tell you what they are spending more money on. Cutting headcount is the wrong discussion to have. It doesn't really matter. It's like going into Vietnam and say, boy, you don't have enough forces to win this war. You're 50 or 100 years too late. The next war, the current war, to some extent, is being fought in cyberspace. The real battleground is entirely virtual now. That's where you can cut up countries' financial systems and defenses. You can steal their intellectual property. You can shut down their electricity and their transit and their e-commerce systems. And you don't need a head count to do that. You got half a dozen smart guys in a room full of computers. That's where the war is going to be waged. Doesn't matter how many jeeps and tanks you've got unless you want to impress your friends. And that's not really what warfare is about. You have to be able to wage a strategic conflict on the battlefield that's important. That's the computer world. What's happening in cyber warfare, and there is a cyber dimension to the Ukraine thing, make no mistake, is absolutely fascinating. And it makes all this talk of headcount and tanks and jeeps and airplanes pretty obsolete, which will freak the Lockheed Martin people right out, but that's the way the world is going.
Interesting.
Even the F-35, they're making the same engine. Lockheed Martin making them, GE's making them because they're in different congressional districts. and every congressman, as I say, has to protect the jobs in their district. You don't fault them for doing that, because they're certainly going to be blamed. You know what they say, 1,300 employees of GE lost their job, and their opponent comes in and says, why weren't you there to protect them? Are you powerful enough? And then certainly anybody who has a lot of military installations, or, for example, if you represent Fort Hood or a lot of GE contractors in a congressional district, then you have to get on the Armed Services Committee, and your main job above everything else is to protect them, for example. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base right outside of John Boehner's district, so obviously he has a lot of jobs dependent upon that.
Okay, so back to the Ukraine thing. For Convince Me, looking into your magic balls, do you think the situation is what's the situation going to be like in 6 months? Is it going to be quiet in Ukraine? And Tom Farmer, since you came up with the brilliant Convince Me, you get to go, and you've got a minute. Ready, go.
I'm still pondering this magic balls thing, but I will say that it's going to be quiet in 6 months. This is going to have to blow over, and there's going to have to be a realization that the Ukrainian people have a right to self-determination, as we said a couple of moments ago. There is no percentage for Vladimir Putin to wage a Czech 68 strategy and try to hold the nation down by force, nor does it make much sense to split the thing up piecemeal style and assign the east and Crimea to the Russians and the west to Western Europe and the EU. Nobody wins there, and you have to consider the energy that's flowing through. There's too much money in that energy business for anyone to sacrifice it for any length of time. So yes, it's going to blow over, and we're going to go back to our usual state of simmering mistrust.
Okay, Rich Rubino, is it going to be quiet in the Ukraine in 6 months?
First of all, Tom, I just remembered that Senator Scoop Jackson from Washington State, his nickname was the Senator from Boeing, because that was his main interest in Washington State. But no, I agree with Tom. Basically, I don't think there will be. I think this will definitely, the tensions will definitely simmer down, just like they did in Georgia in 2008. Remember John McCain saying we are all Georgians now? Well, how many people, a year later, even remember that even happened in Georgia? Now people are trying to remind people what happened in Georgia, for example. I think that Americans specifically have very short memories. The American media has very short memories. It's kind of like parachute journalism. Everyone goes into a place, and they cover what's going on. Everyone leaves, and then it kind of simmers down. We saw this certainly in Libya. We saw this in Kosovo. I mean, do Americans even know that there are still U.S. troops in Kosovo today, for example? I think there will still be troops in. I think the Russians will continue to have some troops in the Crimea, but I don't think that this is going to be. I don't think that this is going to escalate any further, and it's certainly not going to be, which I think some, are speculating this is going to be somehow the beginning of World War III, or there's going to be a new Cold War on this or something, but. Perhaps the worst possible outcome for Russia could be that they're no longer a member of the G8, in which case, I think that they can live with that.
Yeah, how sad for them. Putin didn't even bother to show up to the last one. If you're going to throw him out of something, throw him out of something he cares about, like AARP.
Well, I got to tell you that
you get your discounts at Avis. It's great. You get 5% off the hotel. But,
it's like going to the next. It's like going to the National Governors Association meetings. The governors go every year. Do they really accomplish that much other than going there, talking to the other governors, having forums? It's the same type of a thing. I don't think there's really any major agreements that are going to be
there's food.
I disagree with both of you. I think this is going to keep simmering. Maybe it'll quiet down in 6 months, but this is definitely not over, and it will continue. I think it's a little bit sort of like Syria. It's going to be a thorn on our side, and it's going to keep festering until it blows over. So that's my thought on that. I think the country is divided, Ukraine, the country is divided, and I think we're yet to see some kind of violent outbursts. Seeing those militaries so close to each other on both sides, someone is bound to lose their cool and a shot is bound to happen. That's my opinion on that. So, moving on. How about this Russia Today anchorwoman who resigned on air after saying that Russia sort of controlling the airwaves? Very interesting, Tom Farmer. Kim Wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cute, I guess. But you know, if you have nobody mistakes the Russia Today product for some kind of, you know, down the middle, unvarnished truth sort of thing. It's obviously propaganda. Look at the name of the thing. And if she thought that she was going to have a chance to go out there and deliver anything she wanted instead of the corporate line, she's a little naive. It was kind of nice that she resigned on air, gave us a little dramatic moment. Nobody ever heard of her before. She was completely obscure. About 200 people watch Russia Today in the United States. But last night she was on with Anderson Cooper on CNN, you know, talking up a good game about how brave she was. So it's a cool little moment of drama. But if you have a real issue with the editorial dimension of your journalism job, you take it up with your editors and your management. You don't spill it out on television in front of the American people. It doesn't do anybody any good, really. It doesn't do her any good professionally. Would I hire her as a news director? No, because the next time the coffee's cold in the break room, she'll go off on the Live at 5 and resign over that. You know, she's got to control herself. You know, I don't think it's a huge issue, but it was an interesting one.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm shocked there's gambling going on at this casino.
I'm horrified to learn that Russia Today is not completely objective about this.
I know, I'm just absolutely shocked. I just cannot believe this. I thought they were just completely right down the line.
All right.
I believe that there is actually, on Russia Today, there is actually a Russian bias. This is just absolutely bewildering to me. I don't know where this came about. I thought that not only Russia, but I thought that all media was uncolored and completely objective on everything. This is just absolutely shocking.
Okay, what did you have for dinner, Rich Rubino? Lord have mercy. This is comedy here. All right, let's turn to our final thoughts. What am I missing? People focusing on, you know, on this Cunningham ISA drama. Others are, you know, deep in the Ukraine. But what's something we're not talking about, Rich Rubino, that we should know about?
Yeah, well, remember right around 2000, John McCain was all the rage. When he was a presidential candidate, he was the insurgent. All the young people, a lot of them independents, support him in the Republican primary. He won New Hampshire by 16 points. He was a very popular man at that time. In 2004, 2006, McCain was barnstorming the country. He was even going to Rhode Island campaigning for Lincoln Chafee. He had about a 90% approval rating and name recognition rating around the country. When he ran for re-election in 2000 and I guess it was 2004, he won with 76% of the vote. He won with 59% of the vote when he ran for re-election this last time in 2010. Now they're polling him the most unpopular United States senator in his home state in the entire nation. He is at 30% in Arizona. Talk about a downfall. This was somebody who was an absolute legend. They made a movie out of him. He was, as they say, he was campaigning all over the country. He was extremely popular in Arizona. Democrats wouldn't even criticize him. I remember in 2004, John Kerry, Wesley Clark, John Edwards, all these Democrats were running campaign commercials with John McCain in their ads. Now John McCain looks like it looks like it's a 50-50 chance he won't even win the Republican nomination should he choose to run in 2016.
Wow.
What a downfall.
Wow. Okay, Tom Farmer.
All right, I'd like to use my time to talk about lunatics. We've all looked at political websites on the internet and scrolled through the comment section and felt you have to take a shower within 10 seconds. It's a cesspool of irrational dementia. And you start to wonder, are all these people crazy? And the answer turns out to be, yeah, pretty much. A new study from the University of Manitoba polled people who say that they enjoy internet trolling and baiting other people online in comment threads. And it turns out their behavior correlates well with Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, direct sadism, and vicarious sadism. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
See this big bar graph? Those are internet trollers, and that's deviation from the mean for sadism and psychopathy and narcissism and various forms of lunacy. Those are all the normal people in there. These are the people on Yahoo. commenting on stuff on our Facebook page sometimes, commenting on what we have to say. So the next time you weep for the Republic because the quality of internet discourse is so terrible, dry your tears because those people are outliers. They're insane. Regular, normal people aren't writing that much. Don't troll. Don't worry. It's still a healthy country except for them.
If I could just say quickly, there's also a new trend. It's called spoofing. And what people do is they go on YouTube, they'll call people up, and they'll basically yell and swear at them, and they'll get their responses, and then they'll call other people with those responses. If you go on YouTube, and then this person will say, they'll say, you called me. They'll say, stop calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then they'll call other people, and the people will say, stop calling me. Like, I didn't call you. If you go on YouTube and you type in soundboards, if you type in just the word soundboards, or if you type in the name Frank Garrett, and you will see there are millions of these on the internet. And this is a new trend. I think this is the same type of people when they're not into politics. I think this is what they do. They just make prank calls all day and then put them on YouTube. It's really, and then they put pictures to it as well. Really, type spoofing. Type in the word Frank Garrett on YouTube.
Okay, good to know.
It's not that new, but it's very funny. I'll tell you. Unless you're the guy who's going to call at 3 a.m.
All right, you guys, these half hours fly by. If you're watching us on live stream, thank you for watching. Check us out on Facebook. Politics is Sexy. Always fun, always informative. Tom Farmer and Rich Rubino, thank you so much. And thank you for watching. And see you next week for another edition of Politics is Sexy. Good night, guys.